And we are live on the True Mets Talk podcast. It is the New York Mets off day discussion. I am joined here by my good buddy Zach as we discuss the New York Mets series win over the Arizona Diamondbacks. Talk a little bit about game 3 that we saw happen yesterday in order for the New York Mets to take this series. As always, though, on this off day, we got to spam the W's first and foremost, right? But we also need to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, all that fun stuff. Zach, how you doing
Yes,
today?
sir. Good, Chris. How you doing?
It's been a while. It's been a while since we had a little post-game stream or something like that, right?
Yeah, I think it's been about a week or so, but good series all in all. Second game of the series was good, but good to leave Arizona with a good win, like a very confident win, one that there was basically no doubt after. I think the fourth inning when Soto hit the first home run. It was like in the middle inning, so. Basically from then on, say it was a six, it was that late, but yeah, since then, I mean, after that, it was basically smooth sailing. The Mets took over the game completely between Senga locking down and then the bullpen, finishing the job off, and then the offense able to pile on some runs. So hopefully we can carry that into what will be a hard fought series against a good team in the Chicago Cubs.
100%, and we'll talk about that series coming up in Queens, actually, against the Chicago Cubs, who are a red-hot team themselves. Big shout-out to Rob, who's also going to be live later tonight on his channel, spamming the W's right here, and also Daniel checking in. Afternoon, everyone. Absolutely correct. It was a gem by Kodai Senga. We'll talk about the performance here, the multi-home run performance as well from Juan Soto, and the first home run did come in the 6th inning after Kodai Senga just kept on stranding base runners after surrendering 5 walks. But we'll get into that here. Please, everybody, I know it's a little bit early. It's not quite the evening time. I'm sure people will start to come in, as this stream, continues. But hit the live chat section. How do you feel about this Mets victory in Arizona, a series victory, and a really important one at that when you're taking a look at the split or the head-to-head matchups against the team that's going to be right there at the end of the day when the season ends in the NL wildcard standings. And again, please do hit those thumbs up buttons, subscribe to the channel, whether you're watching this live or whether you are going to catch the replay. Subscribe to the Sunny Days Media 516 YouTube channel as well. That's where you can find Zach and a whole bunch of others talking about baseball, football, basketball, the whole 9 yards, hockey too. Subscribe over there. Okay, let's talk about yesterday real quick. And let's get into a little bit of the box score here. You have the Mets lineup who a little bit slow, getting started, right? And the first run came in the 6th inning, as we just said, with the Juan Soto solo home run. And I want to also talk about the difference between yesterday and game 2, because game 2, everybody was pissed off. I feel like everybody in this fan base on social media was just pissed off. And rightfully so, because Zach Gallen threw an absolute gem again for the second time in a row facing this Mets team after he has historically struggled against this Mets organization in his career. But I like the at-bats that this lineup in game 3 took a lot better than the approach that they had against Zach Gallen in game 2. And I also like the actual lineup within itself, from Lindor all the way down to Tyrone Taylor and everybody mixed there in between. Luis Torrens, unusual batting in the 5th hole, right? Love that. Luis Torrens has been a stud with the bat, hits a double in this game. That's awesome to see. And then you have 6, 7, 8 between Beatty, and I know that you're probably smiling from ear to ear having Brett Beatty back, because I know that you're a big Brett Beatty and have been a big Brett Beatty believer. Luis Angel Acuna, who's my guy, and Jeff McNeil. And I said this on the pregame stream yesterday before game 3 kicked off, is that if you have Jeff McNeil in this lineup, I'd like to see a lineup like this more consistently when you are putting together McNeil and Acuna in the same lineup. I'm not sure how feasible that is, because Brandon Nimmo, the day after sustaining a little bit of a shakeup in the outfield with his leg, was back in the lineup, but he was DHing. If Nimmo is going to be a little bit more impactful at the DH spot moving forward, like I think he will be, I have no problems throwing McNeil in left field and just letting Acuna get everyday reps at second base. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, Acuna needs to start every day at second base. I mean, his glove is phenomenal, and just the impact, even when he's not consistently getting on base, when he does, the impact he makes on the base paths is incredible. And you saw it later in that game, driving in. I believe it was Torrens. I think it was on a 2-strike count, and he just did a good job of ripping a ball in the center field to drive him home. And he's just been since he broke out, I guess, in the middle of April. He's been really, really good with the bat and on the base path, and that's something the Mets really don't have outside of Lindor, someone able to consistently steal bases. So adding that as a shakeup to this team, someone that can consistently get into scoring position, even on singles or walks, is another dynamic that really helps the team. And then from there, McNeil, like you said, I don't know how feasible it is for him to play in left field every day. But if this hyperextension or knee jam, whatever they're calling what Nimmo got, I don't think we got an official term for it or official diagnosis. But if it is something where he's going to have to DH and cannot play the field as much, yes, this is going to be the way to go. But then where does that leave you with Vientos? Does Beatty get more playing time? Do you maybe put Beatty in left field? I don't know. I think the Mets have some interesting discussions to have and things to figure out, but it's not necessarily bad things. So even though Vientos hasn't been great, I still believe in him. I know a lot of Mets fans still believe in him. Beatty, who was crushing before he got sent down, was crushing it in AAA. Hopefully, aside from this past game, can replicate that.
Yeah, Brett Brady did take the 0 for 4 with the strikeout, but it was good to see him in the field at third base and hopefully, being able. I mean, there's no shock that he's back up with the big league club because of, a couple of injuries that were sustained, unfortunately, one of which being, Jesse Winker landing on the 10-day IL with the oblique injury, in that Cardinals series. But yeah, there's a lot of different, configurations with the merry-go-round of the guys that we just mentioned that Carlos Mendoza can decide to utilize, whether you play Brett Beatty at second base, third base. I have no problem if they want to play Luis Angel Acuna in a handful of games at third base, but I think we all have to still believe in Mark Vientos until further notice, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I understand that all in all, he hasn't had an impressive season, but he's still riding a 5-game hit streak, and I still see a little bit of these adjustments that he's been making, but he still has to make in order to replicate what he did last season through and through. So I'm playing the patience. I'm using the patience card with Mark Vientos. And I think that a lot of Mets fans should do the same thing. But I think it's also a valid discussion defensively, right? Because you did see that base hit / air that went right through Mark Vientos's legs in game 2, happen. I've never really been opposed to letting Vientos have a couple of days there in between at the DH spot, especially when you're facing a lefty, opposing on the mound. And at that point, you can utilize either Brett Beatty or Luis Angel Acuna at third base, whoever you decide to roll with. But as long as Mark Vientos is in the lineup, I could care less if he plays third base or DH. That's just how I view that. Were you shocked to see Brandon Nimmo back in the lineup after sustaining it, and hobbling around in game 2? Because I was shocked.
Yes, I was. I was more shocked to see him stay in the game. Once I saw him kind of get up, it honestly, it didn't look like anything bad. Once I saw him move around, because once he started moving around, it kind of looked like, to me, his knee just buckled on him. He take a weird step and his knee just kind of bent back in. And once he started moving around after that, it seemed like there was nothing structural, especially since the trainer went out and checked on him and they let him stay in. So after that, I was more shocked that he stayed in that game, but with him being in the game, yesterday's game, it made sense that he was DH, and good to get him off his feet and keep that bat in the lineup because he's been good as of late. And then
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, just to finish up on what you were saying with Vientos, he's earned the right to struggle. I mean, without him, we are not making it to the NLCS last year. He was our best player in the playoffs. He was one of our best players from the beginning of June through the end of the season, the regular season. So he's earned that right to struggle. Yes, I think with Beatty back up, it's maybe time to move him to DH, at least part-time, and let Beatty get some reps at third base since Jesse Winker isn't here. And I think what we've seen from Marte, he's not earned a spot in this merry-go-round. He's like the last person we're picking from, him or Jose Azocar. So I think right now Vientos, obviously, he's earned the right to start pretty much every day. Maybe a mental health break, with yesterday, just get a step away, sit on the bench, enjoy the game with your teammates, and we'll be back there at Citi Field against Chicago. But Beatty has earned the right to play some games with his performance before he got sent down and in AAA, more so than Marte has, who's been god-awful.
Yeah, Starling Marte, I think I also went over this after he took not really an
3
offer.
strikes in
He
a
went
row.
with 1 for 4. But yeah, he took 3 strikes in a row in a bases loaded situation. And it's just like uncompetitive at bats after
Exactly.
time and time and time again. I understand that people get caught up with the game winners and clutch hits here and there. But like, how much is that really worth? If you are relying on him on a platoon basis and he's going to contribute that at the very minimum, if he sticks around, right? If a quote unquote buyout is not an option. I think that it's
Mhm.
definitely on the table, especially as we
Gotta
progress
be.
into the summer months, right? I mean, I think that you can start thinking about that,
Especially with some of the
especially
performances on the farm.
right. Well, especially and especially if he just doesn't pick it up. I
Oh, yeah,
mean,
that too.
it's definitely on the table. It has to be.
Has to be.
Um, I'm rooting for the guy. Would love to see him stick around on this team. I think that his presence, his veteran leadership is valued,
Agreed.
but at the end of the day, you have to perform on the field. And Starling Marte, by and large, has not done so this season. So I agree with you. All these guys that we're talking about have definitely earned the right to be in this platoon, right? This merry-go-round of trying to figure out positionally who to play on an everyday basis. Starling Marte probably not in that equation. So we'll see how much left this Mets organization has with
Mhm.
Starling Marte. But what was really good to see about game 3 that I was going to mention is that you see Pete Alonso, right? He's been so good for this Mets team all season long. He's been so
Yeah.
locked in. And then the last couple of days, he takes an 0 for in both days. Yesterday, 0 for 5 with 2 strikeouts. And the Mets offense still being able to go ahead and come through and contribute and produce runs, even when Pete Alonso, who, he can go 0 for the next. Of course, I'm exaggerating here, but he could take an 0 for 15, an 0 for 16, and I'll still be okay because that's how good he's been for the Mets over the
Oh, yeah.
first month, just about give or take of the season. And it all starts with the guy. Okay, listen, it starts with Francisco Lindor. I understand that. But yesterday, it started with Juan Soto, who this fan base has been I wouldn't say all this fan base, but there are a select few people in this fan base, right, that look at the contract and are very impatient. This guy's got to perform. He's getting paid $765 million. This guy is
Mhm.
shrinking when the Mets need him, especially with the lack of consistency in the offense, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, let's take a breath. Yes, he hasn't looked like Juan Soto, right? He hasn't
Yeah.
looked Juan Soto-esque all in all. The overall numbers, the batting average will tell you that, right? But he's
That
getting the
well.
job done. And don't look
Yeah.
now, but over the last 15 days, he's hitting over 300 with over 1,000 OPS. And over the last 7 days, he's hitting 346 with damn near a 1,400 OPS. This
I'm
guy,
telling it.
as I mentioned weeks ago, Zach, if you were counting this guy out and you thought that he was going to have this extended slump, I'm not sure on which planet you've been living on, because it hasn't been Earth when we're watching the sample size of what he's done in his career. So Juan Soto getting adjusted to a new team, new uniform, new stadium, I understand it. Struggles are going to happen.
Oh,
But
yeah.
this guy is heating up, and he's heating up at the right time. And I think that especially alongside Pete Alonso, if you fully get him going, I understand that the Mets will take a look at what's transpired over the last 13 days in the last 4 series, going back to that Washington Nationals series and how the Mets have fared. But I'm
Mhm.
talking about overall lineup production. Juan Soto is coming around. The numbers of the past 2 weeks suggest that. And he just looks rejuvenated up there at the plate. And I love it.
Yeah, that he does. And I mean, when I've been on the show, I've talked about it till I'm blue in the face that he's someone that's getting unlucky. His expected numbers are, much better than what the actual numbers look like. And I know people want to point at the high leverage situation is an inability to drive in runners in scoring position. And that has been somewhat of a problem this year, but I think that's just another domino waiting to fall. He's going to start driving in runs in droves too. I mean, we're seeing him hit the ball hard, and it's not finding gloves, it's finding grass or it's finding the stance. So eventually it's going to happen too with runners in scoring position. And when you look at his expected stats, I mean, he has an expected OPS over 1,000. I mean, this isn't you don't have that if you're truly playing bad and deserve as poor as his stats have sort of looked, because they're still good. They're just not $765 million stats, but the expected stats are. So I mean, things are going to start turning for Juan Soto, and they already have. They're going to continue to trend in this direction. And aside from that, the impact he's had on the lineup. I mean, Lindor has gotten going at a much earlier time than last year and in previous years with the Mets. Pete Alonso's playing better than he ever has. Yes, things have not looked amazing behind that, but Nimmo's starting to turn it on. Vientos is, we think he's turning a quarter. His stats over the last 15 games have been a bit better. Albi's come back and been better. So it all starts with Juan Soto for this team, because if he's hitting well, the rest of the team is probably doing amazing. But even when he hasn't been playing well, the rest of the team has been able to pick up the slack.
And I'm always preaching the one thing about when you see these guys have these types of stretches, right, where they're just, it just seems like nobody can get them out and nobody can figure them out. That's on, in opposition on the mound, is they're utilizing the opposite field. It's like not rocket science. Juan Soto, hit a home run oppo yesterday. The other one was dead center. The first one was dead center. Francisco Alvarez, ever since he's come off the IL, the best version of Francisco Alvarez is going the opposite way. That's where he's finding consistent success. Pete Alonso has been, the prime example of that all season long. So, and Mark Vientos also, who looks like he's turning it around a little bit, and his, the base hits that are pretty well struck into the outfield have been up the middle to the right side. It's really not rocket science. And we've been talking about this. I've been talking about this in particular since spring training. This lineup the approach needs to be all fields. Take the pull side home runs and doubles when they come. But if you are trying to round the baseball and if you're trying to go ahead and just hit it, to the pull side consistently, it's probably not going to work out in your favor. You're going to ground out a shit ton to the shortstop or third baseman, or even just hit a weak fly ball to left field. And I'm not saying you have to hit the ball the opposite way every single time. That's not what I'm saying. But taking the ball where it's pitched, that is a marker of having the correct timing. And I really do
100%.
think that a lot of the early struggles of a lot of this lineup, right? When you take a look at Vientos, when you take a look at Nimmo, it's been more so timing than I've seen anything mechanically wrong, right? It's bad pitch selection, first and foremost, swinging, at balls out of the strike zone. That's probably the biggest culprit that I'll say. And then number two is timing. And so I like exactly what I'm seeing. I like the approach differential that I'm seeing out of this Mets lineup. And you can tell individually, because I still think that this lineup hasn't clicked together just yet as they can. Just objectively speaking, not 100%. It's getting there, though. It's getting there. But individually, when you're seeing some of these bounce back performances, these hot stretches of a week or 2 weeks that we're talking about with Soto, Nimmo, Alonso for sure, but Francisco Alvarez, they're taking the ball where it's pitched, and you hear Keith Hernandez say it on the broadcast all the time. It's really not hard to figure it out.
100%. And speaking of Francisco Alvarez, he hasn't done it super consistently. You still see him getting jumpy and pulling off, but he does when he's getting his hits, especially that first home run, the only home run he's hit, he went to the opposite field. And that's the best way to do it, because you can let that fastball get a bit deeper. That's the one pitch you want to drive to the other field. And then with the off-speed stuff, you can sit on that and you could pull it or hit it to dead center, and there you go. It's the key. I mean, it's obviously not as easy as it sounds, but it is, it is the way these guys perform well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shay's, Shay Parking Lot, shout out to Shay. Follow you over on X. You do a great job as well talking Mets. I enjoy your tweets. Hello guys, happy to get through the Diamondbacks. We need to win series against these top teams in the NL. And that's what it's about, right? When you talk about a 162 game season, I've been saying that from the jump. I've said it for the past 2 years, 3 years, ever since I've had this channel, however long it's been. It's about stacking series wins, and sweeps will come when they come, but it's about stacking series wins. And it's good to see against the top NL teams like the Diamondbacks, who just took a series from you, in your place, go to their place and do the same thing to them. And that's exactly what the Mets did. And they're going to have more opportunities to do this with the Cubs coming up. I know that they see the Pirates after that, but, with the Dodgers coming up, they're going to have a lot of opportunities, because this is going to be a hard stretch that they're embarking on. And by the way, speaking of the Pirates, did you see that they fired their manager today?
I did see that. I'm surprised. I mean, they haven't been good, but and the player that there's just I think it's something to do with the ownership and the management up top, not at the field level, because that team is just not good. They have been very disappointing. I mean, the inability to develop O'Neal Cruz, Cabrian Hayes has just been startling, to be honest.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of news around the league. But let's get back into the Mets. Kodai Senga. We got to talk about the pitching aspect of this, man. We got to talk about
game by Kodai.
really weird game, but I enjoyed it. You know what? I didn't care how he got it done. I said it again on the stream yesterday. I don't care. Like if it's an ugly performance, which I don't really think necessarily yesterday was an ugly performance. It kind of was in the beginning of the ball game, but then he settled in.
He did.
But just the walks, like that's such an unorthodox outing to have. But he only threw 89 pitches, walking 5 batters and throwing 89 pitches. You know, you would expect 95, 100 plus if you're going 6 innings. But he gets the job done thanks to, in part, by some pretty good defense that this Mets team played for him, as opposed to game 2 when they were a little bit more lackadaisical behind David Peterson in that 5-1 loss in game 2. But you had, the ball in the gap that Tyrone Taylor and Francisco Lindor were able to execute a perfect relay to get the runner out at home. I mean, this catching, tandem between Alvarez and Torrens, and particularly Torrens to begin this season, just throwing out everybody that attempts to steal on him. Another one yesterday between him and Lindor. It's just really good to see. And I will say, Luis Torrens, we could talk about Francisco Alvarez versus Luis Torrens. I think that we both agree that Francisco Alvarez should and will be the everyday starter. But every single time I see Luis Torrens' name penciled into this lineup, I know that we're getting sound, fundamental, and borderline elite defense behind the plate. And it's really refreshing. And I'm sure that Kodai Senga enjoyed to see that behind him, because that makes a pitcher, especially when they don't have their full command, that much more confident. So you see the final line for Kodai Senga: 6 innings, no earned runs, 89 pitches, only 2 hits surrendered, 4 strikeouts, and 5 walks. You don't like to see the walk to strikeout ratio there, but he got the job done. What did you see out of Kodai Senga yesterday, going 6 innings instead of 4 the time before against the Diamondbacks at home?
I saw someone that he couldn't get his fastball over, but he still kind of battled through what was a very inefficient start to begin with, and then he was able to kind of just work through and find it later on, and really relied on that ghost forkball to be the main key to get guys out and to be his put away pitch. Even with only the 4 strikeouts, he was able to do some weak contact and get guys to put the ball in play and let his defense work behind him. And then it's just something that he needs to figure out with this fastball, because we can see when he's on with the forkball, it's great, but the fastball, that's going to be the key to starting things for him. If he can get his fastball over and he can locate it much better, that's going to be the start. It's going to be a start of him being able to get deeper into games, deeper than 6 innings, and then having even better starts where he can maybe strike out some more and just look sharper, because he was good. The stats were good. It was great to see him get through the 6 innings. He just wasn't super sharp.
Yeah, I agree. But let me just take a look at this, because I was looking at something while you were talking. I think this goes over a lot of people's heads, because people want to talk about, and I get it, right? I mean, he was sick, and it was, you have a 6-man rotation for a guy that's supposed to be performing. But let's just take a look at Kodai Senga's outings thus far this season, right? When we're talking about the perpetual problem of the Mets rotation not going beyond that 5th inning, right? And getting into the 6th inning and beyond. First 2 outings against the Marlins, 5 innings each, right? 5 innings each. Athletics, he goes 7 innings.
Yeah.
Versus the Cardinals, he goes 5 2/3. Then 6 innings, 4 innings, and then 6 innings. I mean, Kodai Senga is off to a tremendous start this season.
He's been great.
He has
the second best ERA in the NL.
I know. And so, analyzing this team and watching this team, if I didn't look at Kodai Senga's ERA, and if I didn't look at this Mets rotation, their individual and collective ERA pretty much every single day, I don't know if I would guess that Kodai Senga has, like you said, the second best ERA in the league right now, right?
You would never
know that. You would never think that, because there is still some efficiency problems. Like you just mentioned, you'd like to see him a little bit more sharper. Imagine if we are nitpicking and asking Kodai Senga to look a little bit more sharp, given what he's done so far. The sky's the limit at this point in this season for Kodai Senga. And this was a guy that a lot of people were very interested and borderline scared to see how he performed this season, especially after not really getting the big name pitcher that everybody wanted, right? We're really going to rely on Kodai Senga as our ace, right? I thought that he was ace material if he stayed healthy.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest concern, is the health with Kodai Senga. And it's still going to be a big concern moving forward, right? Because we're only a month and a half into the season, if that.
Yeah.
But just looking at what this rotation, particularly led by Senga, has produced, I get it. A lot of 5-inning performances, especially out of Griffin Canning and Clay Holmes. I understand it. How can you not be happy with what this rotation has produced?
No, there's no reason not to be.
I'm ecstatic.
There's no reason not to be. I mean, they've been phenomenal, and I know a lot of people, I know Rob included, he's someone that doesn't love the fact that the starting pitchers can't get deeper into games. But this rotation, this team was built for them to be to carry the lion's share of the innings. It's built, like, the bullpen is built to have multiple guys that can go multiple innings, that can, basically bridge you to your late inning relievers. If they can get you through 5, your bullpen's not going to get tired, because you can have Brazaban, Buto, and Kranick go multiple innings multiple times a week, which is going to help you save your late inning guys. It's when guys can't get past the 4th inning. That's your issue. 5 innings for this team is like 6 for other teams. I think you got to really look at it like that, because especially if they go to, no, that's a lie. If they go to a 6-man rotation, things are going to change. But if they stick with this 5-man rotation currently, 5 innings is like 6, because this bullpen is built to not get worn down by guys not going deeper into games.
And that's also something that I was going to point out, this rotation. They're doing this without having Sean Manaea, right? And whatever Frankie Montas can produce, right? And so, I mean, you say 5-man rotation, but they still are spreading this rotation out to have Senga go every 6th day, right? But Senga has not pitched so far this season. One time, if I'm not mistaken, he hasn't pitched on the 5th day of rest. He's always gone 6 days of rest, or every 6th day, I should say. So they're having guys like, and you saw it with the Hagenman spot start or spot long relief, appearance outing. Yeah. Same thing with Brandon Waddell. Like, they're plugging in these guys with Tidwell. Same thing, right?
Yeah. But they've manipulated it so it didn't affect the bullpen.
Correct. And so when you get a guy like Sean Manaea back, right, that's not really a quote-unquote, like everyone's saying, a punt game every 6 days now at this point. No. You're putting competitive guys on paper out there each and every 6 days. And I really do think that, especially with the Manaea injury, when he comes back, 6 days, a 6-man rotation helps him. It doesn't only help Kodai Senga, it helps Sean Manaea try to gain his footing, right? Coming back from injury. Same thing with Frankie Montas. I'm not going to say it's going to negatively impact, it's not going to negatively impact David Peterson or Griffin Canning, whatever their routine is. I'm not going to say that, but it also does, it does a lot of good. And I think that I don't have any problems with it personally.
No, I just wonder how it will affect the bullpen, because we haven't had a 6-man rotation, quote unquote, with the impacting the bullpen in losing someone, because when Hageman came up, they were able to send down Kranick and call him back up because of the Jose Siri injury. Blade Tidwell was the extra man on a doubleheader. I don't remember how they worked it with Waddell. Was that because of the Danny Young or AJ Minter injury, if I'm not mistaken?
I forgot what the corresponding move for Waddell was.
I don't remember what
that was. I think it was Minter. I think it was Minter.
Yeah. Maybe it was.
Anyways, it doesn't really matter, but your point remains, though.
Yeah. And then, and you were mentioning Manaea. We're going to see Montas before Manaea. I wonder where Montas goes, assuming all goes well. I mean, does he go right into the rotation to be the 6th man, or does he find his way into the bullpen? Depends who's playing well. Because, the odd man out right now is Daniel Nunez. Everyone else has been phenomenal. Aside from Budo, but he's been much better as of late. So,
right.
I don't know where these guys slide in. And then Then we have another problem, a good problem to have, and what happens with Minaya when he comes back? Who leaves, assuming no one's injured or no one's underperforming. So there's a lot of good problems to have that the Mets will have to, decisions the Mets will have to make in the coming, it's coming up in the next month and a half. We'll see Montas and then hopefully Minaya shortly after.
I viewed this time, from opening day to now as the Mets dipping into some of that elite depth that they have, but regaining that depth back. And when you want to regain that depth, it's going to be in the middle summer months, right? I mean, as long as you can stay afloat like this Mets team has, in the first month and a half of the season, when you get the guys back in June, mid-June, everything is going to start flowing. Excuse me. Everything's going to start flowing, and it's going to seem all is well, and this fan base is going to stop panicking. And I've seen a lot of panic for not for no reason, because I understand it, but maybe a little bit of unnecessary for the wrong reasons. That's a good way to put it.
A lot of people are panicking over the last 10 games since the Philly series about the Mets going. I think before yesterday was 5-7, and
there it is.
Yeah, there it is. I mean, they were 5-7 before yesterday, so now 6-7. I understand, being upset that the Mets weren't able to build upon a nice lead there, but it's early in the season. These numbers are going to be ever changing, until we get into the later months when things get a little bit more serious and a little bit more, down to the wire, so to speak. But I think what you need to really look at is the fact that this is a long season. I mean, the Mets aren't going to be, they're going to have more 10-game stretches where they go 5-7. This is such a long season. I wouldn't get too hung up on the fact that they had a few bad games. And I think in that stretch, there was one game where they lost by more than 2 runs, 2 games where they lost by more than 1 run. I mean, they're in it to the bitter end, and that's even with the underperforming with runners in scoring position. That's even with the inability of some of these guys to go deeper into games. So it seems to be just fine. They're going to figure things out. Juan Soto is figuring things out. The rest of the team is figuring things out. There's no reason to be worried, really, in my eyes. I think the only thing I would be worried about is what happens in the bottom half of the order, what they decide to do with the likes of Jeff McNeil, Starling Marte. I was worried with Tyrone Taylor. I'm not anymore. He's been phenomenal. And I think we have enough. I think we have enough on the farm to replace him if he starts to underperform himself. I think Drew Gilbert's been very good in AAA. Jeff Williams has been phenomenal in AA. I think there's options there for the Mets. I think the Mets will be good. I think the Mets will be fine.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, if you look at this stretch right here, going back to that Washington series and then the Arizona series, the first go round, and then St. Louis, just a lot of frustrating losses there that we've had to talk about and assess. You let 2 games slip away in which you had a lead in Washington. That should have been a 4-game sweep. That Arizona Diamondbacks, I was ready to rip my hair out. I'm not gonna lie to you. That was a sweepable series within itself. Maybe not sweepable, but definitely winnable. 100%.
The Cardinals was very sweepable.
And the Cardinals series was definitely sweepable too. So it's like, I don't assess those as these teams beating the New York Mets. It's the New York Mets beating themselves. And the biggest thing that you said, it's not even the lack of length, right, out of the rotation. It's the lack of, I guess, consistency and lack of production with runners in scoring position. I mean, if the Mets, in at least 2 or 3 of these games that you see on your screen, if the Mets came through with 1 or 2 hits with runners in scoring position, because I think one of these games they went 0 for 10. I'm forgetting which one it is, but they went 0 for 10. I think it was in that, and the Diamondbacks.
It's the last game of this. It's the 4-2 loss when Soto hit the 2 solo shots. 4-2 loss.
Okay, that's right. So if they just come through with 1, they tie the game with runners in scoring position because they had bases loaded a handful of times, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, twice.
And if they come through 2 times with 2 hits with runners in scoring position, you're talking about 2 for 10. Instead of 0 for 10, you win that ball game.
Yeah.
And so it's just like things like that where I'm like, this offense still, and that's why my assessment is this offense still is not clicking on all cylinders 100%. They're getting there, but it's just not, it's not 100%. And these series that we're seeing, right?
Yeah.
St. Louis, Arizona the first time at home, and then Washington, they tell that story. And so if you're telling me that the New York Mets are what now 10 games over 500 at this point?
Yes, 10 or 9.
24 and 14. Let's take a
24
look
and
at
14, then 10.
Yeah, 24 and 14. Those are standings right there. If you're telling me that they're 24 and 14, with these ugly games in between, counting for losses, I'm sitting here looking back and I'm like, really?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good problem to have. And that makes me optimistic about this team instead of pessimistic.
100%.
If they went out there and lost some of these games, because I know that the stretch on paper doesn't look good. You said 5-7, 6-7, whatever it is, over the last 13.
Mm-hmm.
If they looked like they just were completely outmatched by anybody, all right, sure. But Arizona was probably the only good team that they played. Let's be honest. Washington and St. Louis, they
St.
beat
Louis is fine.
themselves. St. Louis is fine. They're 500, but like not even Arizona should be, taking those games from the New York Mets. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
The Diamondbacks are a good team, and the Mets should have really, realistically, in my assessment, only lost one game to them in the 6 games that they played.
Yeah.
So I know it's hindsight's 2020, shoulda, coulda, woulda. I understand that, right? We can't change the fact the Mets are going to lose ball games over 162. It's going to happen, like you said. They're going to have stretches of 13 games multiple times in a season when they go 500, right? Or 6-7. It's going to happen. But there is nothing really outside of maybe, right? Some of the depth in the bullpen that's concerned me just a little bit. But you can't listen.
It was more so
You're
the
not
use
going to
of
tell
the
me
bullpen depth, in my eyes.
Right.
I think
Well,
it was more so
listen,
the use of it than actually the actual bullpen depth.
Correct. The use of the use of the depth, because honestly, bullpen guys, it's kind of like you plug and play over a course of 162 for the bullpen. It's going to happen. We saw it last season. Look at the bullpen in game 1 last season versus how the bullpen looked in game 162.
Yeah.
9-day different.
9-day.
Right? You're talking about a season where you were beginning with Jake Diekman, acting as your
Several
closer
DFAs.
at one point against the Yankees.
No.
And so the depth going into the depth is, I guess, a little bit concerning, but I just go back to the runners in scoring position. As soon as the Mets figure that out, as soon as this lineup figures it out, they're going to be A-okay against any team. I'll take them against the Yankees, the Dodgers. I don't care who we play. I'll take the New York Mets, and I'll be confident in that. This team
100%.
is built to last. David Stearns really built this team to last over 162, even given the injuries. And like I said, the Mets are going a little bit more into the depth than they would like right now, but you're going to start to get names back. You're really not going to get Danny Young or AJ Minter back, which absolutely sucks. But guess what? You're going to get Brooks Raley back. You know what I mean?
You already got Nunez back.
You already got Nunez back. He didn't look good in this series, walking 3 hitters, I believe, in his first appearance, but he's going to figure it out.
Yeah.
He's going to figure it out.
Brendan Waddell is a name down there that you could potentially turn into a reliever. He's a guy that can be – he's really your 9th starter now when Montas and Nania get back. I mean, you have this kid, I think it's Felipe De La Cruz, that's in AAA, who's tearing it up. I don't think he's going to be an AJ Minter, but I think he could be about as good as Danny Young has been. He's got a solid fastball. He's got an okay slider. This is someone who can make an impact here as a left-handed arm.
Also, did you see the news? This is kind of an underrated move because this guy stunk for the Nationals when he signed a contract with them. But Colin Poche signed to a AAA minor league deal with the Mets. Colin Poche has over an 11 ERA. Was that?
Was he a Rocky last year?
No, he was a Tampa Bay Ray. He's been a Tampa Bay Ray in his first 4 years, and then he signed a contract with the Nationals. If you look at the 2025 numbers, they're objectively horrible over 13 appearances. But you look at the last 2 seasons before that, in 2024, the 3.86 ERA, 1.15 walks and hits per innings pitched, and 43 appearances. And then in 2023, 66 appearances with a 2.23 ERA and a 1.09 in the walks and hits per innings pitched category. This is a guy that in the offseason, when we were talking about adding a lefty to the bullpen via free agency before they signed, AJ Minter, I had him on my list. He wasn't my, top tier guy. We're all talking Tanner Scott, AJ Minter, etc. But I was like, Colin Poche has had a pretty decent career with the Tampa Bay Rays. And I get it. He goes to the Nationals on a contract. He's putrid. I guess they DFA him because that's how bad he's been. But you're bringing in a guy for depth on a minor league deal. He's getting into an organization that has a solidified pitching lab at this point. This is a guy you can come up and see potentially come up after he proves whatever he needs to prove in
100%.
AAA to get another dual lefty bullpen back if all goes well with Brooks Raley and Colin Poche replacing Danny Young and AJ Minter. Like,
Yeah.
this
He's
is just
someone that I
genius work at this point from David Stearns. If everything goes according to plan, like he sets this organization up for success with all these depth guys. And it's just like he's constantly working in season, off season. It doesn't matter. He's like, what's the next move? Because at some point, the depth is going to dwindle and we're going to need to recuperate that. And that's
yeah.
what I love. That's the beauty of David Stearns, really.
And he doesn't sign anyone just for the hell of it. He signs people with a purpose. You know, we this might not be someone we see you know, soon. We might not see him until the end of the year. I don't know how long the contract we signed him to. I don't know if we just picked up the Nationals contract or whatever it may be. If he's a part of the team next year, maybe it's someone we see next year. But he signs people with a purpose, and his purpose is to correct whatever he saw wrong, get him back to how he was pitching in Tampa Bay, and hopefully he can be a usable piece for this major league team if need be. You know, last off or trade deadline, I wanted the Mets to trade for Colin Poche. You know, the Mets needed another left-handed reliever. We didn't get one, but that's someone I wanted the Mets to trade for. And obviously they didn't, but now we end up with them here. You know, you look at Huascar Braziban, someone that the Mets traded for last deadline, who was, you know, good for the Marlins, terrible for us after we traded for him. Yeah. We worked with him in the offseason. David Stearns in that pitching lab got him right, and Jeremy Hefner. And here we are, and he's our most valuable reliever. No, bar none. You know, he's been phenomenal for us. So maybe Colin Poche has a redemption arc like that with the Mets.
I love the Braziban love, dude. Like, I'm here for all the praise to Huascar Braziban.
We have him for everybody, like 4 more years at like $1 million a year too.
Yeah, it was a thing of beauty. I mean, I get it didn't work out last season, but you know, this is the forward thinking, right? You don't just trade for guys or bring them into the organization for the short-sightedness of only this season, right? The Mets have a couple of relievers in this organization that, and I forgot what the name of one of the guys was that they actually signed from the Cubs. I think it was Algile from the Cubs, where he is recovering from Tommy John surgery, but he's another viable candidate for 2026. And so he's had success in the Cubs uniform. And it's like, it's about this season because we have championship caliber aspirations this year, but it's also about when you see these moves happen, how can these be, you know, these guys be useful for next season as well? And that's just, I understand that some people just don't think like that. I get it. But that's why I'm here to tell you all about that, you know, so you guys don't forget. That's what David Stearns is doing. That's his job to think like that. Yeah. These are the updated NL East standings here. The Mets remain up top at the front, while the Phillies have been shaving off some games off the lead. Again, don't want to get too much into the standings. Watch until it really becomes, as the True Mets Talk podcast at the top looks a little bit deviated away. So I apologize about that. But anyways, doesn't matter. 2-game lead over the Phillies. The Braves are kind of playing decent baseball recently. They're 17-19 still, but they're only 6 games back after a really rough start to their season. Nationals and the Marlins round things out at 7 and 9 games back respectively. But, you know, it's really been the Mets dominating at home, which has been the tail of the tape here in the early goings of the season over the first, 38 games, 13-3 at home, and an even 500, 11-11 on the road. So, you know, that's expected. You know, take care of business, play 500 baseball on the road, and take care of things at home. And that's exactly what the Mets have been doing. And this is like complete 180 with how the Mets started last season. If you remember in the first couple of months of the season, they loved the road and they couldn't hit anything at home. They couldn't win at home. And everyone's like, what's going on? You know, do we need to bring the dimensions of Citi Field, you know, in again? And so I'm like, no, like these guys are going to figure it out. But it's good that they have been feeding off of the energy of the Citi Field crowd, who has been absolutely fantastic, whether it's a weekend game, whether it's a weekday game, they have been showing out. and I absolutely love it. And you can tell that the Mets love playing there as well.
Oh yeah, they love it there. The crowd's phenomenal. I'll actually be there on Saturday, so if anyone's there, you see me, come say hi. I think I'll be somewhere in the hundreds on the third base side. Got some tickets through Costco. But yeah, it's just great to see that the Mets are thriving at home, and their road record, yeah, it's 11-11, but it could be much better than that. 3, 4, 5 more wins potentially with how close they played some of these other teams. I mean, both games of that doubleheader, they easily could have won, and I think they could have easily won 3 of 4 against the Nationals. I think there was one game where I thought they just didn't look like they had it, and then even no, that's it. I was thinking about the Diamondbacks one, but this is a team that has been so in pretty much every game this season that they could easily have 5, 6, 7 more wins in total. So they continue to play like this, they're going to be in a great spot. I mean, yeah, they got it's a short gap between the Phillies, but there's so much time for that to move. Whether it gets larger, shorter, whatever it may be, but there's a sizable gap between them and the bottom of the NL East, which starts with the Braves, with how bad they started. So it'll be good to continue getting that lead up and just building on it now. So we're not stressing at the end of the season where every win matters and where you kind of can relax a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. This is a great comment.
Yeah.
I am pumped about the New York Knicks, by the way.
I wanted to bring it up. What a game.
Listen, man. Whew. Going back to MSG, 2-0. Take one at MSG. I mean, it'd be great to get a 4-game sweep, but I think that's a little bit unrealistic. But the Knicks, back-to-back games where they were losing by 20 and come back.
20.
Crazy.
Wild. I mean, what a 2 games. I mean, Mikal Bridges too yesterday. I mean, for him to go from not scoring a single point in the first 3 quarters, I think it was over 10. I know it was at least 11. I think it might have been 14.
14
It was
points.
14
and
points.
A huge play at the end of the game.
Yeah, massive defensive plays at the end of the game. The one that sealed the game for them. And
yeah,
what a thing of beauty that was. And I was kind of hoping it would go to 7 because I'll actually be in Boston the weekend of the Mets play the Red Sox, and the night I think the Sunday would be Game 7. The Sunday or the Monday would be Game 7, so I'd be there. I probably wouldn't go to the game because I'm sure tickets are ridiculous, but it'd be cool just to be in the city, and hopefully brag to some of the Celtics fans. But at this point, I'm hoping to make it that far. I want this.
I'm good on Game 7. If it goes to Game 7, I don't like the Knicks' chances, to be honest. But if it goes to 6, and if it's 6, then I like the Knicks' chances, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a good start. So they just got to put the pedal to the metal. And D's right. Orange and blue skies all the way. Let's go Mets and Knicks, 100%.
Yes, sir.
Last topic here. Let's talk about the series upcoming against the Cubs. Again, series by series basis here. We just took a look at the standings as Ray was saying. It's very uncharacteristic and not my MO. To look at the standings this early on. But on off days, I kind of like to do it, especially when you have an off day every week. Every week and a half. It's a good stretch of time to not look at the standings and then kind of check back in. But series starts tomorrow. At Citi Field, Holmes versus Jameson Taillon, former Yankee. What are you expecting here? Because as they were saying on the broadcast yesterday, the Cubs are a great team. Their offense is clicking on all cylinders. I think that they're one of the leaders, in a lot of offensive categories so far this season. So the lineup is legit. But they're starting pitching. You can tell they have TBD going against Tyler Miguel in Game 2. They've had a lot of injuries sustained to that rotation thus far. I guess some keys, things that you're watching out for in this series. It's going to be a really tough battle. Cubs versus Mets is always a tough battle when they meet up. It's always a grind of a series. And so, Holmes versus Taillon is the first matchup. But just in general, what are you looking out for this series?
Let's get some early leads for these guys. I mean, let's get some early runs on the board. I mean, I think, in my opinion, at least at this moment in time, even though Senga did have a great day yesterday, I'm most confident in these 3 guys. Oddly enough, Canning and Holmes more than anyone else, the 2 new additions. And then McGill, who had, I think, was it a rough start in St. Louis? I think it was a bit unlucky, but he's been super, super good for the Mets this year. His stuff has always been phenomenal. It's all starting to click now. I'm looking to get these guys some early leads and let them pitch comfortably, let them pitch loose, and hopefully not have to worry so much and be so tight around the zone against what is a very good lineup that the Cubs have, spearheaded by Kyle Tucker. I want these guys not afraid to throw them some pitches, go after them, because when you start working and trying to work the corners a little bit too much, that leads to walks, that leads to high pitch counts, that leads to hanging breaking balls and mistakes, and crooked numbers on the board. So that's not what we want. We need these guys pitching loose. So hopefully against what is a weaker starting staff that the Cubs have, the Mets can really pile on early and often.
Looking at the Cubs roster and all the stats, you're right. They are definitely led by Kyle Tucker. He's leading in batting average, home runs, RBIs, OBP for the Chicago Cubs. But it's like, Ian Happ is having a decent season. Dansby Swanson is the one guy that's having the worst season of their regular starters at this point. Former Met prospect Pete Crow Armstrong and that Javi Baez. I didn't want to bring it up, but I got to bring it up. And John Heyman always loves to bring it up in that trade.
What's funny about that is Baez was phenomenal for us. That was probably the best stretch of his career, even including his MVP season. He never played better baseball than he did with the Mets. It just didn't work out because obviously the Mets ultimately didn't make the playoffs. And then Pete Crow Armstrong, it looked like, he wasn't going to be, too much. He was going to be a solid bottom of the lineup guy, but now he's developed into what has become a very, very good baseball player. And good for him, good for the Cubs. No ill will there, but it's always it stinks. It stings. Whenever you see that brought up, it's a little twist of the knife in our side.
Yeah, I mean, Pete Crow Armstrong has got a 2.1 WAR right now. If you like WAR and that statistic, and Pete Alonso's at 2.3, so that's really gives you and puts into perspective about how good PCA has been for the Chicago Cubs up until this point. But again, going down the list. Seiya Suzuki having an okay season, right? Nico Horner has having a good season. Carson Kelly, dude, he's hitting 348 with over a 1200 OPS. Like, out of where? Like, how? You know what I mean?
Never expected that. That's their catcher.
And the one dude. Kelly? What was that?
Carson Kelly's their catcher, right?
Catcher, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the one dude that is always a thorn in the Mets sides every single season, no matter what team he's playing for, and I just know he's going to have some sort of impact on the series, just like looking at this roster. John Birdie, who's hitting 271.
Former Marlin.
Yeah.
Former Marlin.
This is a pesky team, man. This is a pesky team when I look at their offense and what they can produce as a lineup. And it's no surprise that they are, at this point, the NL Central leaders by 3 games over the Brewers. But the key to this series is scoring early and often off of, their bullpen or their rotation that's a little bit injured right now. That's a scary team when they get their pitchers back and their starters, especially, Imanaga, etc. But this rotation for the Mets, Holmes, McGill, and Canning are going to have their work cut out for them. But again, as I just mentioned, if this team decides to go ahead and start hitting with runners in scoring position, I'm taking the Mets over pretty much anybody. And, the Cubs are included. So it's a good sign for the Mets that Soto's getting going, especially over the past, 2 weeks, week especially. Pete Alonso looking for continued success. If they can get Vientos and Nimmo just on the same path, on the same train, and getting that top 5 of the offense to a point where we all think they should be, it's going to be very hard to beat the Mets no matter what the rotation is doing.
100%. I think, 100%. I think at this point right now, I think we know who our starters are going to be, aside from, I guess, what's going to be a little bit of a merry-go-round between your Brett Beatty, Acuna, and Jeff McNeil at this point. Who's going to start where? And I guess Starling Marte included in that, between second base and DH, who's starting where. So I think it's just finding the right positioning for these guys, because I think where they've run into some trouble is not knowing who to have protect who in that bottom, 2/3 of the lineup between 4 and 9, because it's been a bit of they've tried Vientos at 4, they've tried him at 5, they've tried him at 6. they've had Marte or Winker at 4. They've had Nimmo at 4. So I think it's just finding that balance of who is best suited where. And I think they should eventually settle on Nimmo at the cleanup spot, having Vientos protect him. And then after him, it's kind of a crapshoot. I think Acuna kind of fits in at 9, Tyrone Taylor ahead of him, maybe reverse the 2. And then where do you fill in the remaining gaps? I don't know. I guess what's left is Brett Beatty and DH, or I guess that would be your DH then. So I think and Alvarez or Torrens. So I think just trying to find out how this lineup is best positioned, because it outside of 1, 2, and 3, we haven't had any consistency, in production whatsoever, aside from Alvy since he's been back and Acuna when he's in there. So it's trying to get that consistency down there, because these guys are only seeing, 12 to 15 at bats a game at most. Top 3 of the order. So the bulk of the at bats is coming from the bottom of the order. We need them to produce a bit too.
Do you think, this is the last question before we head on out of here, do you think that the Mets, with how many names, and I think that we'll definitely see this post deadline, we'll get the answer to this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the Mets and Mendoza will eventually this season settle on a consistent A lineup, or do you think that's going to be continuous shuffling? Like, let's try Vientos at the 4 spot for a series, and then the next series let's try Nimmo, and then up and down the board, because we've seen so much shuffling with personnel, and not only personnel, but also the batting order position in which we've seen each respective personnel in this Mets lineup. Do you think that there's ever, with as many options and the plethora of options that Mendoza has at his disposal, do you think we'll settle on, this is the A lineup, these are the guys that are going to be in the A lineup, and this is where they're going to be batting when we deploy the A lineup? And do you think that they will ever settle on that, or do you think it's just going to be constant rotation?
I think it's up to the players, really. I think like we said, Vientos has a leash. He's earned the right to struggle and work his way out of it. So I think Vientos, he'll get some time before he's starting to be benched more consistently. And I think the ultimate goal of Stearns and Mendoza and this whole organization is to have Beatty eventually be able to play every day, because they keep giving him chances after chances after chances. They had the opportunity. I think who is it down in AAA? There's a few guys that could have been called up as DH. I know it's like 2 guys that are sticking out to me. I can't remember the names, so on the tip of my tongue. But they went with Beatty. They went with Beatty for a reason, because they want him to be the guy. They want him to be their everyday third baseman, and Vientos eventually be their DH. It didn't work out last season in that regard. Vientos stuck at third base because he hit so well. I think he will break out of it, and I think he will be, his bat will play. It's just a matter of, if Beatty's bat can play, because we know his glove can play at third base. So I think that's the route they're trying to go down, but it hasn't worked out yet. And I think depending on how Winker and Marte, or I guess more so Marte, plays the rest of the year, what they will do with the DH position if it's not Beatty. So, and that would be the only way they go with an A lineup. To take a long way to get to my point, that's the only way they get to an A lineup, because the way the team's built right now, it's built to have this merry-go-round kind of deal going on. They're giving what seems to be a little bit longer of a leash than I would like, a lot of fans would like, to McNeil. Marte is obviously getting a pretty long leash because of what he has done, and I guess his relationships with the other guys on the team. So it's going to be frustrating, because I think for the next 6 to 8 weeks that Winker's out, we're going to probably be dealing with this a lot. And hopefully it sorts itself out and Beatty just starts to hit where you can't get him out of the lineup. Vientos turns it on. He can't come out of the lineup. And you're going to have to play those guys every day. Acuna is working his way into there. I know he sat 2 of 3 against the Diamondbacks, but yesterday without him, he looked great again yesterday. And I think he's going to continue to look good, where he's going to force Mendoza's and Stearns' hands. So
I'm not sure how that's not already happened. How do you look at what he's been doing and not play him every day? But that's
the Diamondbacks broadcast said the same thing, that he needs to start over. He's too electric. It's too dynamic, and it's so funny, like how he gets to the major leagues and he hits and plays well. And when he was on the farm, he looked like he might not even be a major leaguer. So
yeah,
I was dead wrong on that one. I will own that one. I'll wear that one.
he just impacts the game in so many different ways. I mean, both sides of the ball, that it's just hard for me to justify or try to justify the decision of not playing him every day. And I can say this until I'm blue in the face. I've said it about 100 different times on this podcast, even going back to spring training. And I'm happy that he's proven me right because he's a special player. And the fact that he's doing what he's doing without having the power aspect of his game from the offensive perspective show up, and he's still showing us that he should be playing every day is just truly just magical. Bold prediction, one bold prediction, and then we're out of here. I know you're a big Brett Beatty believer. Is he ever going to be the everyday starter in this season at third base for the Mets? Yes or no?
I want to say yes.
Okay.
I want to say yes. I think we get a look this series at what a lineup would look like with all three of the young guys. Well, I guess four, including Alvarez, but that being Acuna, Beatty, and Vientos. I do think we get a look at that because, McNeil was hurt a bit banged up a bit at the end of that Diamondback series. I know Mendoza played it off as a hamstring cramp, and then he was bringing Asvikar in there no matter what. That is BS. There was no way in hell he's bringing in Asvikar just to run from third base to home. You don't need extra speed for that. You really don't. And McNeil, he's not the fastest runner. He runs well enough. And he came out for a reason. Maybe it is just a cramp, but I think Acuna, not only the way he plays, I think McNeil's a bit banged up. I think you'll see Acuna play a little bit more in the series. I do hope, and I do think we will see all three of them in the lineup at the same time. And if they play well together, the Mets lineup works well with the three of them in it. I think we'll see more and more of it. I don't think Stearns and Mendoza are dumb. They're going to ride the hot hands.
Yeah. And,
what do you think?
I still got to see it with Brett Beatty, to be honest. I still got to see it. I mean, the stretch that he had right before he went back down, it was awesome. Just need to see a little bit more for him. My bold predictions, though, still, I really don't want to sound, just completely off the Brett Beatty train. I don't think he's going to be in this organization after the deadline. I don't think he's going to be here.
Well, the thing is he's going to be here for a while. He's going to be here for a while because he only has if we were to send him down, he only has one option left, right, in total?
Let me see. Let me check Fangraphs real quick.
It's one or two. But the thing is, the more options someone has, the more valuable they are in trade. So if the Mets were to trade him, they're going to trade him with at least one of those options. So if we see Brett Beatty I think we are going to see him stick around for a while.
He's got one option remaining.
He's got one option. So he's stuck here.
Yep.
He's stuck here unless you absolutely need to send him down for something. I think he's here until he either gets traded or until he works his way into the starting lineup. My big thing with Beatty, he's never gotten that consistent look. It's always been a month at most. He's never gotten that extended look where he's gotten the bulk and the lion's share of the at-bats, of the reps at third base, to the point where he's been able to truly prove it. You saw it at the end of right before he got sent back down for, Alvarez and McNeil, and Acuna stayed here. You saw it there where he was playing really well. And I think he's too good. There's too much talent there for him not to work out. But we will see.
Need to see it. Brett Beatty. Prove Zach right. Prove me wrong, because I don't think he's sticking around this organization. But we'll see. I just wanted to do that because, again, it's the off day. We have fun. And we'll revisit this. I will clip this. We'll revisit this after the deadline, and we'll see. But, yeah, I do agree with you. That option is pretty huge to look at. It's valuable and it's huge to look at because, I don't think Brett Beatty is going to be going back down anytime soon, to be honest with you. Even when his team is fully healthy, I think he's here to stay no matter what he does until, said deadline. So I appreciate it. As always, let's go Mets. Thank you all for popping out to the chat a little bit early. Started up at 4:30, just over an hour here on the True Mets Talk podcast. Thank you so much to Zach from the Sunny Days Media YouTube channel.
Thank you for having me.
Go ahead and subscribe. Yeah, of course. I appreciate it. Subscribe over to Sunny Days Media and enjoy the off day. Cubs series starts tomorrow. Again, a very tough test for the New York Mets at home, but they've been playing extremely well at home, 13-3. Get the job done and start hitting with runners in scoring position, for crying out loud. All right, let's go Mets. We'll see you all later. Peace.
Let's go Mets.